In 2024, the news about the brutal murder of ballerina Mariya Kolodna shocked Ukraine. The killer cut off her hands and head, buried them in the forest, and tried to burn the rest of her body. After that, he continued to imitate activity on his victim's social media accounts for several days, trying to convince her family and friends that Ms. Mariya was alive. The case is complex, creepy, and very interesting. The Territorial Recruitment Center was even involved. In summary, get comfortable as we work to resolve this frightening situation. On February 19, 2024, a phone call was made at the Kharkiv Academic Theatre of Musical Comedy. The call was from the mother of the ballet master Mariya Kolodna. The woman informed the theater director that her daughter would not be coming to rehearsal today. The reason was unknown. No one has seen Mariya herself for 3 days now. Such behavior was completely uncharacteristic for the woman, because during all her time working at the theater, she had never missed a single rehearsal. At the same time, she disappeared from social media and strange posts began to appear. You see, during the entire time of the full-scale invasion, Mariya used to post information about the war, theater, and art during wartime, but now her Facebook page started showing pictures of cats, flowers, and sweets with captions like these.
Today is a wonderful day. Morning isn't always bad.
Such posts, at least at first glance, should indicate that Mariya is happy, she feels great. However, in reality, they were not typical for the woman at all, and so they only scared and worried her family. In addition, the ballerina now responded to her loved one's messages differently than usual. It's immediately noticeable when you communicate with someone regularly that they've somehow changed their writing style, even if it's just a few words. So after a few messages that were uncharacteristic for Mariya, her mother suspected that it wasn't her daughter on the page, but someone else. She promptly called the police. After just a few days of work, the police discovered the mutilated body of Mariya, cut into pieces and left in the forest and in the cellar of an old abandoned building. During this time, law enforcement officers were also able to identify the main suspect in this murder. Before you find out who it is, let's figure out what led up to the terrible events that resulted in the brutal loss of life of a successful ballerina and loving mother. So Mariya Kolodna was born on March 12, 1986. Her mother, Lyudmila, worked as a choreographer and instilled a love of dance in her daughter from an early age. So the choice of future profession for Mariya was quite obvious. Since her teenage years, she often took part in various concerts. She even traveled to perform in the United States of America and England, and successfully combined all this with her studies. After graduating from high school, the girl entered the Kharkiv State Academy of Culture, which she graduated from with honors in 2009. A year before that, the woman made her debut as a ballet dancer on the stage of the Kharkiv Academic Theatre of Musical Comedy.
Mariya was noticed right away. Her natural beauty, grace, elegance, facial expressions, and artistry impressed everyone.
Around this same period in her life, she met a guy named Oleksiy. He was 4 years Mariya's senior. They met online through chatting, nothing out of the ordinary. Oleksiy and Mariya had something in common. He was the son of the principal at the gymnasium where she studied, and he also attended the same school. They probably often crossed paths in the school corridors, but at that time they didn't talk because of the age difference. Or maybe they just didn't notice each other. Nevertheless, now that they had grown up, a 4-year age difference no longer seemed like a serious barrier to communication. And soon Oleksiy and Mariya started dating. Their relationship wasn't exactly simple from the very beginning. They quarreled quite often, but they made up rather quickly. Once, after yet another conflict, Mariya's friends advised her to end this romance. But instead, soon after, the woman announced to everyone that she was marrying Oleksiy.
He pursued Mariya's consent to marry him with great persistence and passion, which may have won her over.
The meeting between the groom and Mariya's parents went quite well. The woman's family was happy to hear that their daughter was marrying a young man from an educated family with a higher education in economics. It's really hard to hold back here. He made the impression of being an attentive and polite young man and had all the qualities to become a reliable support for his future wife. So the parents, so to speak, gave their blessing to this matter. In 2011, Mariya got pregnant and went on maternity leave. Soon the couple had a son, and already in 2014, the woman returned to the stage again and also found an additional side job. She became a choreographer for figure skaters. Thanks to her hard work, Mariya built a successful career and became the chief ballet master at the theater. Meanwhile, Mr. Oleksiy earned a second degree as a psychologist in 2023. However, professional success and knowledge in the field of the human soul did not help the couple save their own marriage. In January 2024, Oleksiy and Mariya decided to separate. The couple agreed to share equal custody of their son, with the boy spending 2 weeks with each parent. Oleksiy asked his wife not to officially divorce yet, fearing unwanted attention from the Territorial Recruitment Center, despite everything seemingly being okay like adults. These are the times and the stories. Ultimately, the man left with his son after the couple's discussion. He was scheduled to visit Mariya on February 17th to retrieve his belongings. A week before that date, the man called his wife's parents and said the following:
"I'm afraid Masha will go off the rails."
The victim's relatives didn't pay much attention to this. In fact, they didn't pay any at all. They knew their daughter well and understood that Mariya didn't even know what it meant to go off the rails. She might know, but they're incompatible. By the way, the series is quite good. Nevertheless, shortly after this conversation, Mariya disappeared. The detectives who took on the investigation, of course, immediately focused their attention on the woman's husband. Besides the fact that in cases like this, investigators always suspect the partners first, there were also other reasons to believe that Oleksiy Cherbakov was involved in the woman's disappearance. The surveillance cameras in the building where Mariya lived recorded how, on February 17, the man entered her apartment with a suitcase and soon left the premises with it. That means he was the last person to see the woman before she disappeared. When Oleksiy was informed about the situation with his wife, he became so anxious that he even had to take a sedative. Then, when the man felt better, he confirmed that he had indeed visited his wife's apartment the day before she disappeared. But he just packed his things and left. Nothing criminal happened. To support his words, he pointed to a suitcase that looked very similar to the one seen in the video. Inside it, there were indeed Oleksiy's personal belongings and several cans of stew. However, law enforcement officers noticed that the brand logo on the suitcase was in a completely different place than in the video recording. So something was off here. Oleksiy kept insisting that he knew nothing about Mariya's disappearance. To support his words, he even agreed to take a lie detector test. And the results of this test confirmed that the man was telling the truth, but there was still one little hairy but. According to the video recordings, the day before he arrived, Mariya entered her apartment. And after the man left, the woman never left the apartment again. Surveillance camera footage also confirmed this. From the video, we saw that Mariya entered her home, but she never came out. She basically disappeared from the apartment. Instead, we saw on the video that on February 17th, her husband Oleksiy entered the building with a bag and went to the apartment. The bag was quite large, and he left with it as well, holding some bags in his hands. During one of the interrogations, Oleksiy told law enforcement that he still sincerely loves Mariya, but it seems she has already found someone to replace him. So, in the man's opinion, the woman didn't disappear, she just went out partying, and with someone else, she lost track of time. The police, who had already searched Mariya's home by that time, found candies, glasses, and a condom wrapper there. Everything really indicated that something romantic, let's say, had taken place in the apartment the day before. Perhaps these things were supposed to confirm Oleksiy's words about Mariya's lover, but the investigators quickly realized that it all looked more like a setup, the purpose of which was the criminal's desire to confuse the investigation. Despite all the clues that in one way or another confirmed Oleksiy's involvement in the woman's disappearance, the man stubbornly continued to insist on his version of events. Then the investigators decided to take a different approach. Fearing the worst and now trying to find not Mariya, but her body, they began checking all the addresses that were in any way connected either to the missing woman or to the suspect. And soon, on February 24, 2024, during an inspection of a semi-abandoned summer house that belonged to Oleksiy's parents, law enforcement officers made a gruesome discovery.
A body without a head or hands was found in an old cellar. The killer had tried to burn it. He surrounded it with tires, poured gasoline on it, and set it on fire. But he closed the cellar lid so the fire wouldn't spread to the house. That's why the fire went out and the body didn't burn completely.
DNA analysis confirmed that the remains found belonged to the ballet master, Mariya Kolodna. The forensic examination showed that the woman died as a result of 4 stab wounds. In the forest where part of her mutilated body was found, a branded badge from a suitcase was also discovered, the very same one. It seems that the man simply had two identical suitcases. He incinerated a body in one and presented the other to law enforcement. The suspect was arrested that day. Overwhelmed by the evidence, he finally confessed to his actions. And he showed the area in the forest plantation where he had buried his wife's hands and head. Law enforcement managed to find the head in the indicated place. However, the whereabouts of Mariya's hands are still unknown. Shortly after the confession, a preventive measure was chosen for the suspect: detention without the possibility of bail. Now the investigators needed to determine the motive and circumstances of such a brutal crime. During the investigation, many friends and relatives of the couple said that the married life of Mariya and Oleksiy was far from ideal, very far from it.
From the start of their relationship, there were surprising moments. Oleksiy was always seeking employment, but we believe Masha's family was ordinary. Only recently did we find out that she was hiding a lot from her family. She didn't want to worry them or make them anxious. That's the kind of person she was, remarkably tactful and patient.
However, what she hid from her relatives was noticed by her friends and colleagues, Mariya. It turned out that her husband often attended his wife's ballet rehearsals. However, it was not to support or enjoy her performance, but to make sure that no one would have excessive contact with her during the dance. One of the ballerina's colleagues said that she became friends with the deceased back in 2014. That was right after Mariya returned from maternity leave. The women started spending a lot of time together, and eventually it grew into a strong friendship. They often met up as families, but Oleksiy immediately made an unpleasant impression on his wife's friend.
He was always acting like a dominant, controlling man. He would respond to any of Masha's opinions with something like, "You're a woman, what do you even know?" He frequently belittled his wife, behaving like an alpha male, which appeared absurd to others. Masha is beautiful, slim and tall, but has started to let herself go, appearing bloated with an unpleasant expression.
Judging by his friends' stories, Oleksiy had quite a high self-esteem. Having 2 degrees, he was in no hurry to get a job. He refused all offers because he didn't want to be an employee. He aimed straight for a managerial position. There was just one problem: no one was offering him such a position. Because of this, Mariya remained the sole breadwinner in the family for a long time. At some point in their relationship, Oleksiy started having problems with alcohol. That's what Mariya's friend claims.
One day she wrote that she came home from work and Oleksiy yelled at her because they didn't buy him vodka. He curses, refusing to get the bottle himself due to the broken elevator. Mariya was relieved their son wasn't home. She locked herself in his room, waiting for her husband to fall asleep so she could sneak to the kitchen for food. Actually, lately he hardly drank at all.
Every time there were conflicts in the relationship between Mariya and Oleksiy, her friends advised her to leave him. However, she did her best to keep the family together for the sake of her son, whom she loved very much. She wanted him to grow up, as they say, in a family. But at the same time, her husband seemed to be doing everything he could to turn the child against his mother. Once, Mariya had to go to Spain for 3 weeks to train figure skaters. For the first time, the woman was separated from her son, Oleksiy, for an extended period after he had finished his studies. The couple agreed that the father, as a certified psychologist, would explain the situation to the boy. He would tell him that his mother loves him very much, that she would leave for a short time, and that she was doing it to earn money for the family. Everything seemed okay, but after Mariya returned, she noticed her son had become very distant from her. He answered with one-word sentences and basically stopped communicating altogether. This really upset the woman. She was convinced that it was her husband who had turned the boy against her. Eventually, right before 2024, Mariya confessed to her friends that she didn't want to live like this anymore and wanted to separate from her husband. When she told Oleksiy about this, he became furious and threatened to take the child away from her. This scared Mariya, and she agreed to keep the marriage, but after that, the couple's relationship only got worse. Notably, Oleksiy began controlling his wife in all aspects, which their friends noticed.
On January 18th, there was a conference of theater workers in Kharkiv. Masha and I agreed to meet near the building. She arrived first and called me. And there was unpleasant wet snow falling. I said I would be there soon and told her to go inside where it's warm. Masha replied, "No, I'll wait." Near the building, I saw a car where he was sitting. He even waved at me. I realized that he needed to see who his wife would go to the event with and who she would leave with, because after the conference, Masha insisted that she and her husband give me a ride home.
She also recalled another incident when she was riding in a car with the couple. There was a strong tension between them in the car. Mariya tried her best to act casual, but it was very obvious how uncomfortable she felt next to her own husband. Already in the new year, 2024, the woman dared to bring up the topic of divorce again. According to her friends, Mariya didn't have a lover, contrary to Oleksiy's claims. She was simply tired of living that way. At the same time, the jealous and apparently extremely self-absorbed Oleksiy couldn't believe that the reason for the breakup wasn't someone else, but himself. In February, the couple was finally able to agree on a divorce and future custody of their son. Despite the fact that Oleksiy supposedly agreed to let his wife go, he started monitoring her on social media, to which he had access. The man read all her messages, and eventually one of the texts from a colleague sparked a wave of jealousy in him. On February 17, 2024, Oleksiy, carrying a suitcase with him, came to his ex-wife. In his confession, the man insisted that he only planned to collect his things and leave. However, a quarrel broke out between the former lovers, during which Mariya allegedly fell and lost consciousness. He put forward a new version, saying that he came to her house to collect his things. She approached him, fell, hit herself, and lost consciousness. And after that, he put her in the bathtub, stabbed her, and cut off her head. According to Mr. Sherbakov, he acted in a state of emotional disturbance. But what happened that day in Mariya Kolodnaya's apartment indicates cold-blooded planning of this crime. He dismembered the body in the bathtub, then he cleaned it very thoroughly. He wrapped the body in stretch film and taped the limbs with duct tape to prevent too much blood from leaking. So in fact, these actions give us reason to believe that he was preparing for this crime. After that, Oleksiy tried to arrange the setting in the victim's apartment so that everything would look like there had recently been a date here. Then the killer took a suitcase and bags with the remains of his ex-wife, loaded all of it into his car, and went to the forest plantation where he buried the hands. And he decided to hide the bag with the head in another place. He buried it a few dozen meters from the road. The man tried to burn the coat and the suitcase in the cellar of his parents' abandoned summer house. He had prepared the fuel cans in advance, but it doesn't really look like it had much effect. Everything indicates that the crime was committed by him deliberately. After hiding the traces of the murder, Oleksiy took Mariya's phone with him and for several days posted various messages on her pages and corresponded with his mother-in-law. Just think about it. He was corresponding with the mother of his murdered wife, pretending to be her. This is insane. One of the shocking facts of the case is that during his confession, he corrected the investigator, who had written in the report that the murder was committed due to hostile relations between the spouses. The investigator wrote in the suspicion that it was due to hostile relations which arose because of him, or at least that's what we believe. When he was reading it, he noticed this and said, "Well, you wrote it wrong. I killed her because of love." After the interrogations, law enforcement officers noted that the man is cooperating with the investigation and does not show any signs that could indicate mental disorders. He behaves adequately. He communicates with the investigator quite normally, and at the moment, there is no reason to believe that he is mentally ill. Despite the fact that jealousy is considered the main motive for the crime, there is another version according to which Oleksiy beat Mariya in order to leave Ukraine without any problems. As mentioned, he feared the territorial recruitment center and might have planned to escape across the border. This is indicated by the fact that during the search of his apartment, a Canadian visa was found, like a single father and all that. The publication Karatko Pro believes that the man could have killed his wife, convinced everyone of her voluntary escape with a lover, obtained custody of his son, and in this way legally left the country. Additionally, he would gain access to Mariya's apartment. Sounds like a motive? It does. On October 11, 2024, the first hearing in this case was scheduled at the Shevchenkivsky District Court of Kharkiv. However, it later turned out that the judge's daughter studies at the same gymnasium where the defendant's father is the principal. Because of this, a new judge was appointed and the hearing was postponed. It was also revealed that despite Oleksiy Sherbakov's cooperation, there are still many unknowns in the case. Mariya's hands, clothes, and mobile phone are still missing. In addition, law enforcement officers have not found the tool that the man used to dismember his wife. During the subsequent hearings, Mariya Kolodna's lawyer insisted that the defendant's detention be extended. Meanwhile, Oleksiy's defense attorney asked for his release on bail. At present, the judge agreed with the victim's lawyer and ordered that the defendant be held in custody until December 15, but with the right to appeal this decision. Meanwhile, the mother of the deceased, Lyudmila, said that throughout the entire court process, she has been feeling pressure from Oleksiy's wealthy family.
From the beginning, I have fought for justice and my grandson's future. The murderer of my daughter must receive the maximum sentence, and my grandson, whom I have cared for since birth, should be able to choose his own future path. But from the very first days of the tragedy, I have faced problems and misunderstandings. The murderer's family tried to gain custody of my grandson by manipulating the child and the guardianship authorities. But God is on my side. The boy is learning to live with me again and to move forward with the pain his father caused. The hardest thing for me is realizing that for many years I welcomed my daughter's killer into my home. And I also remember the first hearing when two athletic-looking spectators came from the defendant's side, probably to look at the judge or at me.
The next hearing in the case of the brutal murder of Mariya is scheduled for December 5, 2024. As reported by GX, people observing the events fear that the killer may avoid proper punishment.
Oleksiy is trying to speed up the events, tipping the scales in his favor. From the start of the investigation, he feigns humility and repentance, potentially reducing his sentence from the 15-year maximum to 10 or even 8 years. For good behavior, he could be released after just 5 years.
A shocking story, friends, that occurred recently. We'll continue to follow it. Whatever the court decides, I hope the killer will be punished as he deserves. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones. We'll see each other soon. Not tomorrow, but in a few days. Thank you.